This question is on immigration and immigration reform. We'll start with candidate Alzaba, and please present your party's position on immigration. We've talked about skill shortages. We've talked about the Mississauga Board of Trade put forward a resolution to expand on the national occupation codes. We have promoted to expand certain occupations to be classified as skilled trades. Candidate Alzaba, what is your party's position on immigration, and how would you satisfy the much-needed talent that we need in Canada?
So in my opening statement, I talked about how immigration is a passion of mine and my family's. My family runs an immigration consultancy business and helps immigrants get settled locally, as well as getting their visas and their immigration application through. So immigration is definitely something that's personally important to me. And with regards to the People's Party of Canada, we want to make a bold reform of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, because it is outdated. It appeals to a different time. Every 30 years, this act needs to be updated, and it hasn't been updated in 50 years. So this is definitely cause for concern. There's been some discrepancies, and there's been issues and loopholes that we need to tackle. Now, I read Minister Ahmed Hussein's report on immigration, and that we have only 26% of our immigrants are, with regards to skilled trade, are being approved and accepted with regards to skilled trade work, and that's not acceptable. We need to increase that ratio. We need to at least balance it to 50-50 with regards to refugees and family reunification, and as well as increase the number of skilled trade workers that come here. Now, we also have the Freedom of Movement Section 6 of the Charter of Human Rights and Freedom that prevent us from encouraging, as the Liberal government has been trying to do with pilot programs. We cannot encourage or force anybody to live where they don't want to live. That is protected in our charter. And so we need to understand how we're going to incentivize for immigrants when they move here and get approved by their specific province to remain in the provinces that have told them that there is work here for them, that there is a home here for them, and instead of relocating into metropolitans that just simply don't have the sustainability or the programs to help them in setting them up for success. So the People's Party of Canada wants to focus on internal integration programs that will help skilled trade workers and immigrants set them up for success as opposed to failure. In those 26% of skilled trade workers, maybe only 10% of them actually succeed, and then others are set to fail, or go back into the social services, rely on the social services, or settle for a job that they don't even want, a job that is an entry-level position when they are, in fact, professionals with degrees.
I'm sure there's somebody else that would like to respond to immigration. Thank you, Candidate Ambler, and then Candidate Hill.
So what I believe is that in just 4 years, Justin Trudeau has weakened our immigration system. What we need is fair, orderly, and compassionate immigration. The illegal border crossings tell people that there are no rules, and we have had, there's still something like 2,000 a month crossing at Roxham Road. There have been 50,000 illegal border crossings in the last 2 years. We really have to go back to a rule-based system where, so that we have control. So, upstate New York is not a dangerous place. I took an Uber cab once. I was, well, more than once, but one time I was in an Uber. I was talking to the driver, as you do when you're in the car, and this gentleman told me that he was a refugee from Chicago because there just wasn't enough opportunity in Chicago. He had come from a country in Africa. He had lived in Chicago for a few years, and then took a cab and crossed the border in Quebec. And this is not how how our immigration system should be. So we really need to emphasize economic immigration, as we talked about a bit earlier, improve language training, credentials recognition, encourage private refugee sponsorship, all the kinds of things that make the management of our immigration system much more conducive to helping out business and to making Canada a better place. My parents are immigrants. They came to Canada from Italy in the 1950s. They came here with very little to speak of. They almost no money, and they came here for opportunity and because Canada's a great country. And so we want that. We want that to continue, and we want to welcome immigrants to Canada, and we want to welcome refugees too, the ones that are truly facing persecution in their home countries. And we want our rules to be followed as well.
So we're going to go to candidate Hill, Alghabra, and back to Alzaba. And if I could ask you to keep your comments brief, we have 2 more questions we'd like to get to before we wrap up.
Okay, so we agree we need to attract immigrants and establish a system that is fair. Recent immigrants make almost 40% less than workers born in Canada. Fees for citizenship have jumped by more than 400% in 2014-15. And too many people, many of them children, are being held in immigration detention centers. An unacceptable number of them die there. Almost 500 people are in immigration detention at any given time. And in 2018, an estimated 7,300 migrants, 115 of them children, were detained. So we will ensure that professionals being considered for immigration have the licensing requirements for their professions clearly explained before entry. We'll work with professional associations to create a robust system for evaluating the education and training credentials of immigrants to Canadian standards, and allocate much greater funding for training in official languages, ESL and FSL, for new immigrants through earmarked transfers to the provinces for primary and secondary public school and free night school programs.
Thank you. Candidate Alghabra.
So David, immigration is very important to Canada. Canada is built on immigration. And other than the Indigenous peoples, every Canadian has come from somewhere, whether they themselves or their parents or grandparents. And it's really important that we maintain a strong system that Canadians have confidence in. And let me correct the record. 60% of Canadian immigration comes as economic immigrants. 25% come as family reunification, whether it's spousal sponsorship or parents, grandparents, or kids. And 15% are humanitarian. And by the way, nobody is able to circumvent the system, whether they cross the border at an illegal border crossing or whether they cross it at a regular border crossing. They all are processed through the system. People who don't prove their legitimate application are deported. And it happens on a regular basis under different governments, whether it was a Stephen Harper government, whether it's the Justin Trudeau government. We have people who come to Canada seeking asylum, and that's why we have an independent system that was set up under the IRB to assess each individual based on their application. We've learned from history. We can't turn back people before listening to their case. Our history is riddled with cases where we've turned back people without listening to their case and without giving them the fair chance to explain why, and we regretted it later on. So it's really important, and it's regrettable. It is regrettable that we have political parties, and it's not just one party, political parties and political candidates who are sowing suspicion and undermining the confidence that people should have in our immigration system, because it is an important one not only for our economy, but for our social cohesion and for the prosperity of our country. Immigrants, our employers, our business entrepreneurs, our students, they will fund our future pensions. They are an integral part of our prosperity. And yes, we have to do a good job recruiting the right type of immigrants. And yes, we have to do a good job integrating our immigration. And yes, there's always room for improvement. But it is really important that we debate that instead of debating sowing suspicion or undermining the confidence in our immigration system.
Finally, just 1 minute to candidate Alzaba, please.
I thought that was what we were doing. We were debating the situation. But in any case, I just want to go back to what candidate Ambler said. I don't dispute anything she said. I actually agree with her. But I wanted to add with regards to the illegal border crossings, just so you know, a lot of Canadians don't know that every person that crosses illegally at the border starts their lives with an arrest and starts their lives with a criminal record. And so we have already set these refugees up to fail. And they are stuck in limbo for 2 years with no status until they get a tribunal. So it used to be 90 days, and now with the backlog and with the way this current administration has allowed for people to cross illegally, they are waiting 2 years before they are even approached by their tribunal and their case heard.
Well, I know candidate Alghabra wants to jump in on this, and I declined candidate Ambler earlier, so I'll give you both 30 seconds, starting with candidate Ambler.
Oh, thank you. Justin Trudeau's mismanagement of this issue means that the world's most vulnerable, those waiting in UN camps, facing persecution and genocide, are forced to wait longer. That's the direct result of the queue jumpers, people that are crossing the border illegally. That's what's happening. So this is an actual disagreement in how the illegal border crossings have been dealt with by this government, not the immigration system as a whole.
30 seconds, candidate
I mean,
Alghabra.
Estella knows it's not true that people who cross the border will not have an impact on actual refugees, the refugees that are resettled here. But let me just say that people have the right to seek asylum under international law and under Canadian law, and it is not true that they start with a criminal record.